The ignition coil works with the flywheel to create the electric charge needed to fire the spark plug. A magnet in the flywheel passes by the ignition coil, exciting the wire coil, creating an electric charge that is then sent to the spark plug. The coil will wear over time and can eventually fail. Sometimes ignition coils fail all at once. Other times they will fail intermittently. Often a bad coil will work when it's cold and then fail once it is warmed up. Replacing the ignition coil is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how. I'll begin by removing the starter. Now I can remove the blower housing. Now remove the spark plug cap from the spark plug and unscrew the cap from the ignition wire. Now remove the switch wire from the ignition coil. And now I can go ahead and remove the ignition coil. Now I can install the new ignition coil. The first thing I need to do is thread the ignition wire behind the carburetor and out the side. Now loosely secure the ignition coil with the screws. You don't want to tighten it completely quite yet. With the coil loosely installed, With the coil loosely installed, now I need to set the gap between the coil and the flywheel. To do that, I'll use a gapping tool. This is just a piece of plastic that's 14 thousandths of an inch thick. You could also use a business card. I'll insert the gauge between the feet on the coil and the flywheel. Now I'll push the flywheel firmly against the... Now I'll push the ignition coil firmly against the... Now I'll push the ignition coil firmly against the flywheel and tighten up the fasteners. With the fasteners tight, I can go ahead and remove the gapping tool. Now reattach the switch wire to the ignition coil. I can install the spark plug cap onto the end of the ignition wire. I'll remove the rubber boot from the cap, slide it over the wire, and then the cap simply threads onto the wire. Once it's threaded in place, I slide the boot up over the end of the cap. Now I can reinstall the blower housing. And I'll finish up by reinstalling the starter. And now you know how to install a new ignition coil assembly in your engine.